Echo 7, the pattern continues.
He paid for a bottle of orange juice at 6:41 on a Tuesday morning. He never came back for it. 3 days later, the juice was still in the dispenser tray of a vending machine at a rest area on Interstate 80 in central Nebraska. The transaction log showed a successful purchase by debit card. The card belonged to a 62-year-old retired mechanic named Gerald Pedigrew. His motorhome was still parked 80 yards away. The engine was cold. The driver's seat was empty. He has not been found. This is Echo 7. Before the cases begin, I owe you a short account of how this investigation was built. Over the past 19 months, I have been working with a retired Federal Highway Administration Traveler Services analyst named Howard Renwick. He spent 28 years monitoring utilization data for the Interstate Rest Area System. In January of 2024, he contacted me after reading earlier work I had published on surveillance anomalies at retail locations. He had been keeping a database of vending machine transaction records that did not match ordinary customer behavior. Specifically, completed purchases where the product had been dispensed but never removed from the delivery tray. Over 3 years, he had compiled 411 such events from agency maintenance records. Most had ordinary explanations: a distracted customer, a forgotten item, a delayed return. But a smaller subset did not, and when Mr. Renwick cross-referenced that subset against missing person reports filed within 72 hours at rest areas in the same 50-mile interstate corridor, 12 matches came back. 12 cases where the last electronic trace of a human being was the purchase of a bottle of juice, a bag of chips, a granola bar, a bottle of water, a coffee cup from an automated brewer. 12 cases where the purchased item was never collected. 12 cases where the person was never seen again. They took place across 12 interstate corridors in 12 states over an 11-year span between 2013 and 2023. Every case involved an adult traveler. Every case involved a vehicle that remained in the rest area parking lot for at least 24 hours before being flagged. Every case ended with no body, no confirmed sighting, no contact, no financial activity, no digital trail. In every case, the last recorded electronic transaction of the subject was a vending machine purchase. In every case, the product was untouched when investigators arrived. Several of the names you will hear have been altered at the written request of surviving spouses, adult children, or legally designated representatives. Where a name has been changed, the phonetic feel of the original has been preserved. The locations, the corridors, the rest areas, the dates, the times, the vehicles, the transaction logs, and the physical evidence have not been altered. The families reviewed the drafts of the sections that concern their loved ones before publication. Where a detail has been withheld, it has been withheld at their request. A brief note on cases you may know about. The disappearance of Tara Calico from Highway 47 near Belen, New Mexico, in September of 1988, does not appear in this investigation. Tara was riding a bicycle and not traveling in a vehicle. Her case belongs to a different line of inquiry, and I will not add to it here. The disappearance of Dexter Stefanek, whose burned vehicle was found at a Montana rest area in the mid-1980s, also does not appear. His body was recovered. Evidence of foul play was documented. The murder of Jane Snow in a rest area bathroom on Interstate 75 in Michigan in the late 1970s does not appear either. Her body was found within minutes by her own children. What follows is a narrower pattern, one that has not been connected in any official document I have been able to locate. The vending machine transaction log is the physical anchor for everything that follows. Its full technical architecture, and the reasons it is impossible for the pattern we are about to examine to be produced by mechanical failure, I will describe in detail after the first 3 cases. For now, understand only this. A modern rest area vending machine logs 4 independent events for every successful transaction. In all 12 of our cases, the first 3 events logged correctly. The 4th event did not occur. The product dropped. The product was never retrieved. We will begin with the most recent case and work backward from 2023 to 2013. This is not the traditional narrative order. I have chosen it because the most recent case is the one most likely to still be open on an active detective's desk. The oldest case is the one most likely to have been boxed and moved to archival storage. If you are going to see a pattern in 12 data points scattered across 11 years, it is best to begin with the point that is still being actively worked. Why did no one come back for what they had already paid for? Gerald Pedigrew bought a bottle of Minute Maid orange juice at the vending bay of the Kearney eastbound rest area on Interstate 80 in Buffalo County, Nebraska, at 6:41 and 14 seconds on the morning of Tuesday, October 24th of 2023. He had driven through the night from Laramie, Wyoming, after visiting his sister. He was 62 years old. He had retired the previous spring after 38 years as a diesel mechanic in Sheridan. He owned a 1997 Fleetwood Bounder, bought used in 2018, meticulously maintained. He was traveling alone. His wife had died of pancreatic cancer 15 months earlier, and he had been living in the motorhome since. He had been on the road almost constantly since her death. The timeline of his final morning has been reconstructed from interstate highway tolling data, 2 pieces of credit card evidence, the rest area vending log, and 1 piece of cellular tower data. He crossed the Nebraska state line from Wyoming at 2:47 in the morning. He stopped briefly in North Platte to refuel at a Flying J at 3:51. The credit card processor logged the purchase. The station camera captured the motorhome and a clear front angle of Gerald in the driver's seat. He was wearing a flannel shirt, a quilted vest, and a John Deere cap. He carried a plain brown leather wallet in his left breast pocket. He bought a 16-ounce black coffee from the station's self-serve counter. He paid in cash for the coffee. He left. He drove east on Interstate 80 for approximately 100 miles at a steady cruise. His cellular phone was with him, powered on, and pinged 2 separate towers along the way, consistent with normal signal handoff at interstate speeds. He pulled into the Kearney eastbound rest area, a standard Nebraska Department of Transportation facility with restrooms, picnic shelters, a vending bay, a small tourist information kiosk, and a long paved loop for RV and commercial vehicle parking. His motorhome entered the loop at 6:37. A trucker parked 2 spaces away, a 54-year-old long-haul driver for a regional produce carrier, saw Gerald exit the driver door, stretch his back, and walk toward the vending bay with his wallet in his hand. The trucker was eating a microwaved burrito at his steering wheel and waved. Gerald waved back. The trucker did not watch him further. The vending log recorded Gerald's card swipe at 6:40. It recorded the product selection, a 16-ounce bottle of orange juice from coil C4 at 6:40 and 22 seconds. It recorded the dispense, confirmed by infrared beam break, at 6:40 and 31 seconds. And then nothing. No removal sensor event. No subsequent transactions from that machine for another 40 minutes, when a woman in a minivan bought a package of peanut butter crackers from a different coil. The peanut butter crackers dispensed normally and were removed normally. The orange juice sat in coil C4's delivery tray, untouched. At 7:15, the trucker left the rest area. He noticed that Gerald's motorhome was still parked with the awning retracted and no visible activity inside. He did not think much of it. Many RV travelers stop at rest areas to sleep for several hours. At 8:50, an elderly couple in a sedan parked in the loop and used the restrooms. They noticed the motorhome. The husband, who was himself a retired mechanic, remarked to his wife on the quality of the maintenance visible in the exterior of the coach. He did not see anyone inside. They left. At 2:30 in the afternoon, a Nebraska Department of Transportation maintenance crew arrived to empty the trash receptacles and check the restroom supplies. They noticed the motorhome, which had now been parked for approximately 8 hours. They placed a courtesy notice on the windshield advising the owner that overnight, parking was not permitted. They left. At 6 in the evening, a second crew returning to the rest area for a late shift noticed the motorhome had not moved and that the courtesy notice was still attached to the windshield. They called the Nebraska State Patrol. Trooper Martin Hollingsworth arrived at 6:47. He approached the motorhome, knocked on the driver door, received no response, and then walked around the vehicle observing the exterior. He noted in his report that the engine block was cold to the touch, that the tires were at proper inflation, that the awning retention hooks were fully engaged, and that there were no signs of forced entry or struggle anywhere on the vehicle. He obtained a lockout tool and opened the driver door. The interior of the motorhome was, he wrote, unnaturally tidy. The bed in the rear was made. A half-finished cup of coffee sat in the cup holder between the two front seats. A road atlas lay open on the passenger seat to the Nebraska pages. Gerald's cellular phone was on the kitchen counter, plugged into its charger, battery at 94%. His wallet was not present. His keys were not in the ignition. The motorhome was not running. The wallet was found 40 minutes later by a state park ranger who was assisting in the initial search. It was lying face down on the concrete walkway between Gerald's parking space and the vending bay, approximately 30 feet from the motorhome and approximately 50 yards from the vending machine. It contained Gerald's driver's license, his insurance card, 4 credit cards, $117 in cash, and a folded receipt from the Flying J in North Platte from 3:51 that morning. The wallet had not been opened since the moment Gerald used the card at the vending machine. The credit card he had used for the orange juice was still slightly protruding from the cash compartment, consistent with having been hastily returned to the wallet after the transaction. The orange juice was still in Coil C4's delivery tray when the maintenance crew accessed the machine from the service side at 9:15 that night. The bottle was still cold to the touch. The label was clean and undisturbed. The plastic seal around the cap was intact. It had dispensed correctly. It had simply never been collected. The search that followed lasted 11 days. The Buffalo County Sheriff's Office coordinated with the Nebraska State Patrol, the Nebraska Department of Transportation Maintenance Division, and volunteer teams from 3 nearby towns. They searched the rest area itself, the ditches along the interstate in both directions for 3 miles, the cornfields and grazing land adjacent to the property line, and a small wooded drainage about 400 yards to the south. They brought in 2 cadaver dogs from a search and rescue unit in Omaha. The dogs alerted briefly on the concrete walkway near where the wallet had been found, but the alert did not continue in any direction, and the handlers concluded that the alert was most likely a reaction to a residual scent from Gerald's body having been standing there, rather than any indication of a trail. No trail was established. No remains were found. No personal items other than the wallet were recovered. Gerald's sister in Laramie was notified. She drove to Kearney to identify the motorhome and personal items. She told investigators that her brother had been in stable mental and physical health, that he had no history of depression despite his grief over his wife's death, that he had not been planning any changes in his routine, that he had called her the previous evening to confirm his travel plans, and had sounded normal. She noted that he had specifically mentioned that he was looking forward to pulling into Des Moines, Iowa, by Tuesday evening, where he had a reservation at an RV park and where he planned to meet a cousin for dinner. The reservation was never canceled. The cousin never heard from him. His credit cards have not been used since 6:41 that morning. Gerald's motorhome was towed to an impound lot in Grand Island. His personal effects were inventoried. The sister asked about the orange juice. She was told it had been removed from the vending machine and placed in evidence. She asked if she could have it. She was told no, that the investigation was still active and that physical evidence was being retained. She accepted this. 18 months later, in May of 2025, she wrote to the Buffalo County Sheriff's Office asking about the status of the case. She received a form letter response indicating that the case remained classified as an open missing persons investigation and that no new leads had been developed. She wrote again in December of 2025, asking specifically about the orange juice. She received no response to that letter. She wrote to Mr. Renwick in April of 2026 after seeing an online posting of his preliminary findings. she granted permission for her brother's case to be included in this investigation. She told me in our one conversation that she had thought about the bottle of orange juice every day for 2 years. She said that the thing she could not stop asking herself was why her brother would have paid for something he was not going to drink. There is no good answer to that question. The trucker who saw Gerald walk to the vending machine gave a brief statement to the Nebraska State Patrol on the afternoon Gerald went missing and was released. He was contacted again 6 months later by the lead detective on the case. The trucker did not recall anything unusual. He had finished his burrito. He had started his engine. He had driven east. The only anomaly in his account came from his own wrist, from a device he had been wearing that recorded his cardiovascular data in the minutes surrounding Gerald's transaction. That anomaly is described in its own section later in this investigation. The detective noted it in the case file. Nothing further was pursued. Gerald Pedigrew is on the Nebraska State Patrol's Missing Persons Registry. His case file, according to the records released to Mr. Renwick under a public information request, consists of 148 pages. The first page is a photograph of the motorhome in the rest area parking lot, taken by Trooper Hollingsworth the night Trooper Hollingsworth processed the scene. The last page is the sister's letter from December of 2025, asking about the orange juice. The second case is a year and a half older. It took place on a rest area on Interstate 95 in South Carolina, and unlike Gerald's case, it was not recognized as a disappearance until the 4th day after the transaction. Louise Harmon, 48 years old, a home health nurse from Savannah, Georgia, had driven north on Tuesday, May 17th of 2022, to attend a continuing education seminar in Raleigh, North Carolina. She was due at the conference hotel by 4 in the afternoon. She never arrived. The seminar organizers assumed a scheduling conflict had prevented her attendance and did not follow up. Her husband, who was at home in Savannah with their 2 adult daughters visiting for the week, assumed she had decided to spend the night at a hotel in Raleigh, rather than driving the long way back that same evening, which she had done on previous trips. He sent her a text message at 7 in the evening and received no reply. He sent another at 10. When she had not replied by the morning, he called the conference hotel and was told that she had not checked in. He called her employer. He called her cellular carrier. He called the South Carolina Highway Patrol. It was late Wednesday afternoon, more than 32 hours after her last known location, by the time her vehicle was found. The vehicle was a 2019 Honda CR-V in a medium gray paint scheme with South Carolina plates. Louise had left for the drive from Savannah north at 4 in the morning on Tuesday, planning to arrive in Raleigh with enough time to check into her hotel, change clothes, and attend the afternoon session. Her route would have taken her up Interstate 95 through South Carolina for approximately 240 miles before veering west on Interstate 26 toward Columbia and then north toward Raleigh on Interstate 77. The Santee northbound rest area on Interstate 95 in Orangeburg County, South Carolina, was a natural stopping point roughly 140 miles into her drive, approximately 2 hours of driving at highway speeds from Savannah. The rest area vending log recorded a purchase on Louise's debit card at 6:12 in the morning on Tuesday, May 17th. The item was a 20-ounce bottle of Dasani water from Coil B7. The payment went through. The bottle dropped into the tray. No one opened the delivery door to collect it. The bottle remained where it landed. Her CR-V was parked in the first row of the passenger vehicle section of the rest area lot. It was discovered by a South Carolina Department of Transportation patrol on Wednesday afternoon, 40 hours after she had arrived there. The patrol had noticed the vehicle in roughly the same location during a Tuesday afternoon inspection and had placed a courtesy notice on the windshield at that time, assuming the owner would move it within a few hours. By Wednesday afternoon, the courtesy notice had not been disturbed and the vehicle had not moved. A license plate check showed that no matching registration had been reported as missing, but the patrol officer, who had been in the job for 19 years, contacted his dispatcher and requested that the South Carolina Highway Patrol run the plate through missing persons databases as a precaution. The dispatcher did. The plate had just been entered, within the previous hour, by Louise's husband. The CRV was locked. The driver's side window was cracked open approximately 2 inches. The back seat contained a small rolling suitcase packed with conference clothes and toiletries. A hard copy printout of the conference agenda sat on the passenger seat. A travel coffee mug sat in the center cup holder, half full. The coffee inside cool, but not stagnant. Louise's purse was on the passenger floorboard. Her cellular phone was inside the purse. Her keys were not. Her debit card, which had been used at 6:12 in the morning, was also not in the purse. Her keys were found the next day by a contract cleaner emptying a trash receptacle outside the women's restroom. They were in the trash receptacle, beneath several used paper towels, clean and not rusted, despite having been there for approximately 48 hours. The cleaner recognized them as vehicle keys and turned them over to the manager of the rest area. Louise's debit card was found 6 days later inside the vending machine, when the service technician opened the unit to restock coil B7 and refill the change tray. The card was lying flat in the change return bin, where it had apparently been dropped or placed after the transaction. It had not been reinserted into the card reader. It had not been used to make any other purchase. It had been put down and left. The bottle of water was still in the delivery tray when the technician found it on the same visit. The technician, a woman in her late 50s who had been servicing South Carolina rest areas for 11 years, noted later in a statement to the state police that she had never before found an abandoned product in a delivery tray, in combination with a discarded payment card, in any unit on her service route. Louise was reported missing on Wednesday afternoon. The search began on Thursday morning. It included Orangeburg County Sheriff's deputies, South Carolina Highway Patrol, South Carolina Department of Natural Resources game wardens, a K-9 unit from a neighboring county, and over 100 volunteer searchers recruited through a community organization that worked with the family. The search focused on the rest area itself, the interstate ditches and tree line for 3 miles in each direction, the agricultural land east of the rest area, and a cypress swamp approximately half a mile to the south. The search went on for 9 days. Nothing was found. Louise has never been heard from since the 6/12 transaction. Her cellular phone was examined by a forensic data specialist who determined that it had been in airplane mode from some point on Monday evening until approximately 6 in the morning on Tuesday. It had reconnected to the network briefly, consistent with her having taken it out of airplane mode upon arriving at the rest area, and had connected to a cellular tower approximately 2 miles east of the rest area location. It had then remained stationary, in the purse on the passenger floorboard, until investigators powered it down 9 days later to preserve battery. It had not received or sent any calls or texts after the morning Louise went missing. The husband's 7 in the evening text message was the only unread item in the inbox. The search was wound down after 9 days. The case was reclassified from active search to ongoing missing persons investigation. Louise was added to the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division's Missing Persons Registry and to the National Crime Information Center database. Her driver's license has not been used. Her professional nursing license was suspended for non-renewal 2 years later. Her bank accounts have not been accessed since the 6/12 transaction. Her credit has not been checked. She has not surfaced in any state or federal database. The thing her husband cannot stop thinking about, he told me in a phone conversation in February of 2025, is that she had carried a travel coffee mug with her. He said that was the detail that refused to make sense. He said Louise hated vending machine water. He said she thought it tasted like the plastic it came in. He said she always carried her own water bottle on long drives, refilled from the kitchen sink that morning. He said she had no reason to have bought a bottle of water from a vending machine. Her own water bottle, he said, had been in the car. He had taken it home after the investigators had released the vehicle. It was still 3/4 full. Louise's husband and her 2 adult daughters do not agree on what happened to her. The husband believes she was the target of something he cannot name, arriving at the rest area as part of a longer sequence he cannot reconstruct. The older daughter, now a nurse herself, believes her mother had a transient ischemic episode at the wheel that morning. pulled off at the first rest area, and wandered into the cypress swamp before losing consciousness. The younger daughter believes something else entirely, which she has not shared with her family, and which she asked me not to repeat. She made me promise. I have kept that promise. The three of them, 8 years after the event, do not spend holidays together anymore. The husband told me, near the end of our phone call, that the thing he wishes most is not that his wife come back. It is that his daughters come back. Why did she buy water she did not need? No one has answered that question either. We move back another year and a half. The third case took place on Interstate 40 in Tennessee, at a rest area located approximately 60 miles east of Nashville, in a section of the state where the interstate curves between rolling farmland and low-wooded hills. The date was Tuesday, November 9th of 2021. The subject was 71-year-old Walter Ashby, a widower from Blountville, Tennessee, who was in the process of moving to a smaller home in Knoxville to be closer to his adult son and grandchildren. Walter had rented a small pull-behind trailer for the move. He had loaded it with boxes of personal items, his tools from a lifetime of woodworking, and several framed photographs of his wife, who had died 3 years earlier. He had scheduled the move for a Tuesday specifically because his son had been able to take the day off from work to help unload at the destination. He was driving a 2014 Chevrolet Silverado pickup truck in a faded beige color, with the trailer hitched behind, at a pace he had described to his son on the phone the night before as comfortable and not rushed. He stopped at the Buffalo Valley Rest Area, westbound, at approximately 7 in the morning. The facility sits in Putnam County, on a quiet stretch of Interstate 40. A rest area volunteer, a 68-year-old retired accountant who worked 2 mornings a week as part of a community program welcoming travelers, was on duty at the tourist information counter when Walter walked in. The volunteer remembered him because they had spoken briefly. Walter had asked for a road map, mentioned that he was moving to be near his son, and had thanked the volunteer when he had been handed a folded paper map and a pamphlet about Tennessee state parks. The volunteer remembered the time because it was just before her 7:15 shift change, and she had been watching the clock. Walter then walked to the vending bay. The vending log recorded his purchase at 7:06 in the morning. He bought a Snickers bar from Coil A2. The transaction cleared. The product dropped. The removal sensor never triggered. The Silverado remained in the lot with the trailer still hitched. A highway maintenance worker noticed it at 11 in the morning. He noticed it again at 2 in the afternoon. By 3:30 that afternoon, he had called the Putnam County Sheriff's Office. A deputy arrived at 4:15. The deputy looked through the truck's windows. The keys were in the ignition. The driver's side door was unlocked. A travel mug sat in the cup holder, full of cold coffee. A brown paper sack of breakfast sandwiches from a Hardee's in Monterey, Tennessee, sat on the passenger seat, unopened. The deputy radioed dispatch and requested a welfare check. He obtained the owner information from the registration. He called the phone number listed on the rental agreement for the trailer. Walter's son answered. He had been waiting for his father to arrive in Knoxville. He had tried to call 3 times and had gotten no answer. He had assumed his father had stopped for a nap, which was not uncommon on longer drives. The son drove to Buffalo Valley that evening. He arrived at 7:40 in the evening. The search began that night and continued for 6 days. The rest area was searched thoroughly. The woods around the rest area were searched with dogs. A 3-mile stretch of interstate shoulder was walked by state troopers. The agricultural fields adjacent to the property line were walked by volunteers. A small creek that ran behind the rest area was dragged. A series of small caves in the limestone hills to the south were checked by a cave rescue team. The trailer was inventoried. All of Walter's personal items were accounted for. The framed photographs of his wife were still carefully wrapped in packing paper in a box near the back of the trailer. His tools were still in their cases. His clothes were still folded in a duffel bag. The Silverado was searched for blood, fiber, and DNA evidence. Nothing unusual was found. The Snickers bar was retrieved from the delivery tray of the vending machine by the service technician on his scheduled visit 11 days later. It was still sealed and undamaged. It had been in the tray for 264 hours. The technician placed it in an evidence bag and turned it over to the Putnam County Sheriff's Office at their request. It was documented and added to the case file. The son told me in a phone conversation in the summer of 2024 that his father had been a diabetic and had been careful with his sugar intake. He said his father never ate candy. He said his father had never, as far as he could remember, purchased a candy bar in the 43 years the son had been alive. He said his father had always carried his own snacks on road trips, portioned and prepared by his mother when she was alive, and by himself after her death. He said there was a small cooler on the floor of the passenger side of the Silverado, found by investigators when they processed the vehicle, that contained sliced apples, a cheese stick, and a small plastic container of almond butter. It had not been opened. He asked me, near the end of the phone call, if I had any idea why his father would have bought a Snickers bar. I told him I did not. The case remains open. Walter's son told me he still drives through the Buffalo Valley Rest area once or twice a year on his way to see family in Blountville. He said that he sometimes parks near the spot where the Silverado had been found and sits in his truck for an hour or two watching the travelers come and go. He said he is not sure what he is waiting for. He sometimes buys a Snickers bar from that same vending machine, holds it in his hand for a while, and throws it away. I asked him if coil A2 is still in the same position. He said yes. He said he checks every time. 3 cases is enough to sit with the anchor before I describe how it works. A modern commercial vending machine, of the kind installed at state and federal rest areas across the United States, contains 4 independent electronic monitoring systems. The first is the payment processor, which logs the time, the truncated card number, the amount, and the transaction identifier. The second is the product selection registry, which logs which coil number the customer pressed. The third is the dispense verification system, which uses a small infrared beam across the delivery chute to confirm that a product has physically dropped into the tray. The fourth is the removal sensor, which registers the moment the delivery door is opened from the outside to retrieve the product. The systems run independently. A successful transaction requires all 4 events to log in sequence. Payment clears, selection registers, beam breaks, door opens. If any one event fails, the unit flags the transaction for maintenance. In all 12 cases, the first 3 events logged correctly. The 4th did not. The delivery door was never opened. The product remained in the tray until a human arrived hours or days later and, usually by accident, discovered it. Mr. Renwick sent the 12 transaction logs to a diagnostic engineer at a Mid-Atlantic vending systems contractor for independent review. She spent 2 weeks examining the data and returned a written report. No mechanical or electronic failure pattern in her company's records could produce the signature we had observed. A stuck delivery door would register continuous beam break events. A power interruption would create gaps in the payment processor log. A mechanical jam would show up in the selection registry as a repeated attempt. None of those fault patterns appeared. Her conclusion, written in a single sentence at the bottom of the report, was that in each case a human being had initiated a purchase, received the product, and then simply not opened the delivery door, and then not been seen again. There is one additional detail from the first 3 cases that will become a 4th anchor before this investigation is done. Gerald's transaction was on a Tuesday. Louise's transaction was on a Tuesday. Walter's transaction was on a Tuesday. 3 out of 3 is within the range of coincidence. I noted it, and I kept looking. We move to Oregon. The 4th case is the first in this investigation that took place west of the Mississippi River, on a long stretch of Interstate 84 that follows the Columbia River Gorge from Portland toward the Idaho state line. The rest area sits at a place called Biggs Junction, at the intersection of Interstate 84 and United States Route 97 in Sherman County, Oregon. It is a scenic facility with a view of the gorge to the north and the beginning of the eastern Oregon high desert to the south. The date was Tuesday, September 15th of 2020. Dolores Finny was 57 years old, a textile buyer for a large home furnishings retailer based in Seattle. She had been driving home from a supplier meeting in Boise, Idaho, the previous afternoon. She had spent the night at a motel in La Grande, Oregon, and had resumed her drive west shortly after 5 in the morning. She was expected at her Seattle office by 2 in the afternoon for a presentation to her company's executive team. She had scheduled this particular meeting herself. She was considered by her colleagues to be meticulous, professional, and reliable. She was not in the habit of missing meetings. The drive from La Grande to Seattle via Interstate 84, Interstate 82, and Interstate 5 covered approximately 350 miles. Biggs Junction sits roughly a third of the way into that drive, about 2 hours of driving at normal highway speeds. Dolores pulled into the rest area at 6:20 in the morning, according to the entry loop camera, a publicly accessible camera operated by the Oregon Department of Transportation that captured low-resolution footage of all vehicles entering and exiting the facility. She was driving a 2018 Subaru Forester in a deep blue color with Washington state plates. The vending log recorded her transaction at 6:28 in the morning. She purchased a bottle of Coca-Cola from Coil D1. The payment logged. The selection registered. The beam confirmed the bottle dropping. No removal event followed. Dolores was not reported missing until Thursday afternoon, 48 hours after her arrival at Biggs Junction. Her Seattle office assumed she had encountered traffic, then assumed she had been delayed by personal reasons, then assumed she had called in sick. Her sister, who lived in Portland and who had been expecting Dolores to call upon reaching the Columbia River Gorge, had tried her phone 3 times on Tuesday evening and had gotten voicemail. The sister thought little of it. Dolores was not always punctual with return calls after long drives. By Wednesday evening, the sister was concerned. By Thursday morning, she was calling Dolores's office, her ex-husband, and her adult daughter, who lived in Denver. By Thursday afternoon, the sister had driven from Portland to Biggs Junction to look for the car herself. She found it. The Subaru was parked in the lot in the shade of a large sycamore, the only one in that section of the parking area. She approached the driver's side window. The doors were locked. The vehicle was otherwise undisturbed. She called the Sherman County Sheriff's Office from the rest area payphone, which she later told the sheriff's deputy she had not known was still operational. The deputy who arrived at the scene obtained keys from a towing service and unlocked the vehicle. He found Dolores's belongings arranged from the driver's seat outward with unusual precision. A leather portfolio lay flat on the passenger seat, closed, containing her meeting notes for the Seattle presentation, a printed itinerary, and a pen clipped into the spine. A folded windbreaker sat on top of the portfolio. A laptop bag sat on the floor of the passenger side, upright against the seat base. Her purse sat on the center console, upright and closed. Her cellular phone was inside the purse, powered off. Her wallet was inside the purse. Her car keys, however, were not anywhere in the vehicle. The car keys were found 2 weeks later by a hiker walking a short trail that descended from the rest area picnic area down to a small pullout overlooking the Columbia River. The keys were on the trail itself, approximately 140 yards below the parking area, next to a small rock cairn that several other hikers had apparently added to over the years. There was no other debris near the keys. They had not been dropped in a location where they would have been visible from the parking area. Someone had carried them down the trail and left them there. The Coca-Cola was still in the delivery tray when the service technician arrived 8 days later. The seal was intact. The temperature of the bottle had equilibrated with the ambient air in the vending bay. No one had touched it. The Sherman County Sheriff's Office coordinated the search with Oregon State Police and Columbia River Gorge Rangers. The search area included the rest area, the hiking trail, the riverbank below, and several abandoned railway grades. It lasted 12 days. A tracker from the Warm Springs Reservation examined the trail and reported no evidence of a descent under duress. No disturbed soil, no broken branches, no drag marks. Whoever placed the keys by the cairn, he said, had done so calmly. Dolores's sister gave me a long interview in the spring of 2024. She told me that Dolores had always loved the Columbia River Gorge. She said Dolores had, on previous road trips, sometimes stopped at Biggs Junction specifically to walk down to the pullout and look at the river. She said the detail about the keys by the cairn had been the hardest part for the family to process, because it suggested that Dolores had walked down the trail of her own volition, which suggested that whatever had happened to her had been, at least initially, voluntary. The sister said she had spent 4 years asking herself what her sister had been doing on that trail. She said the question no one had ever been able to answer was why Dolores had bought a bottle of Coca-Cola before walking down to look at the river. She said Dolores did not drink soda, had not, she clarified, for 19 years, since a gastric procedure had made carbonated beverages uncomfortable for her. She said Dolores carried a travel water bottle on every trip, which was found, still 3/4 full, in the cup holder of the Subaru. The case remains classified as a missing persons investigation by the Sherman County Sheriff's Office. The sheriff at the time Gerald went missing retired in 2022. His successor has not been contacted for this investigation. Dolores' daughter in Denver and her sister in Portland issued a written statement in 2023 on the 3rd anniversary of the disappearance. I will not reproduce the statement here. It was brief. The 5th case moves us south and east to a rest area on Interstate 90 in South Dakota, approximately halfway between Sioux Falls and Rapid City in Lyman County. The facility sits in the middle of a vast, empty grassland. The date was Tuesday, July 23rd of 2019. The morning in question was hot, with a temperature of 71 degrees at 6 in the morning, climbing toward 90 by noon, and a wind from the southwest at roughly 12 miles per hour, typical for a July morning on the northern Great Plains. Nathaniel Eldridge, 44 years old, was an information technology consultant based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He had been driving west on Interstate 90 toward Rapid City, where he was scheduled to conduct a 3-day network security audit for a regional banking institution. He had left Minneapolis the previous afternoon and had spent the night at a truck stop motel in Mitchell, South Dakota. He was traveling in a 2017 Toyota Tacoma in a metallic silver color with Minnesota plates, carrying a laptop, a small roller suitcase, and a backpack of network diagnostic equipment. He resumed his drive at 5:30 in the morning. His route west on Interstate 90 would have taken him through approximately 210 miles of grassland and small agricultural towns before reaching the Missouri River crossing at Chamberlain, and then another 150 miles of more open country before Rapid City. The Vivian Rest Area, named for a small town a few miles to the south, sits approximately 40 miles west of Chamberlain. It is a small facility with a single restroom building, a picnic pavilion, a tourist information kiosk, and a vending bay with 3 machines. Nathaniel arrived at the Vivian Rest Area at 7:43 in the morning, according to the tolling sensor at the interstate entrance ramp. He parked his Tacoma in the first row of the lot, facing the restrooms. He went inside. He returned to the vending bay. The vending log recorded his transaction at 7:51. He purchased a bottle of Aquafina water from Coil C2 and a granola bar from Coil E6. 2 transactions, back to back, same card. Both transactions cleared. Both products dropped. The water was removed from its tray within 4 seconds of dispensing. The granola bar was not. This was the first case in our collection where one of 2 products purchased at the same time was removed normally, and the other was not. Mr. Renwick flagged the discrepancy when he first identified this case. He spent 2 months looking for comparable examples in the dataset and could not find any. In every other case, either the purchased item was collected or it was not. Only in Nathaniel's case did the subject appear to have collected 1 item before abandoning the second. The Tacoma remained in the lot for the rest of that Tuesday. It was observed by multiple travelers who passed through the rest area during the morning and afternoon hours. It was observed by the South Dakota Department of Transportation patrol crew on their evening sweep at 5:50 in the evening. By 7 in the evening, the on-duty trooper had been called. Trooper Kendra Voss arrived at 7:20 and began the initial site assessment. She logged the same observations as in Gerald Pedigrew's case: cold engine, locked doors, keys missing, Cellular phone still in the vehicle, on the driver's seat, powered off. Wallet still in the vehicle. Inside a laptop bag on the floor of the passenger side. Fresh bottle of Aquafina water, 3/4 full, in the cup holder between the front seats. The bottle in the cup holder was the same brand and volume as the one that had dispensed at 7:51. The cap was off and lying on the passenger seat. The water had been poured into the cup holder beyond the height of the open bottle sitting upright. The bottle had been deliberately upended after purchase. The water in the cup holder was the only liquid present in the vehicle. There were no signs of assault, injury, or emergency medical event. Trooper Voss logged the detail in her initial report and moved on. It was not emphasized in the subsequent investigation. It was filed under observations of interest, but not pursued as a lead. Mr. Renwick found it in the case file during his archival work and brought it to my attention in April of 2025. Neither of us has been able to construct a scenario in which a man buying water at a rest area would then, within minutes, upend the same bottle and partially empty it into his own cup holder. The granola bar, meanwhile, remained in Coil E6's delivery tray for 9 days until a service technician collected it. Nathaniel's family reported him missing on Tuesday night when he failed to check in with his wife after the planned arrival in Rapid City. The Lyman County Sheriff's Office and the South Dakota Highway Patrol conducted a 7-day search. The search was complicated by the vastness of the grassland terrain and the presence of multiple agricultural field boundaries, irrigation canals, and grazing allotments that extended for miles in every direction from the rest area. No trace of Nathaniel was recovered. His family has offered a reward. The reward has not been claimed. His wife told me in a written exchange in the autumn of 2024 that the detail she had asked herself about most often was the water poured into the cup holder. She wrote that Nathaniel had been a quiet man who did not like to draw attention to himself. She wrote that the deliberate upending of a newly purchased bottle of water in an empty cup holder did not fit any behavior pattern she recognized in him. She wrote that she sometimes wondered if he had been trying to signal something, though she did not know to whom. She asked me, in the same message, whether I had any theories. I told her I did not. She wrote back immediately, with a single line. She said she appreciated the honesty. The 6th case is shorter in its documented evidence, but stranger in its geographic specifics. It took place on Tuesday, October 16th of 2018, at a rest area on Interstate 65 in Indiana, near the small town of Seymour in Jackson County. The subject was 36-year-old Amanda Oakes, a graphic designer from Nashville, Tennessee, who had been on a solo road trip through the Midwest to attend a design conference in Chicago. Amanda was the youngest of the 12 subjects in this investigation. She was unmarried, had no children, and was, by the account of her friends, moderately active on social media. She had been posting photographs throughout her trip, capturing roadside diners, small-town main streets, architectural details of old barns and grain elevators, and the particular quality of Midwestern autumn light. Her last social media post at 5:41 that morning was a photograph of the interior of her car, taken from the driver's seat, the interstate disappearing into fog, a travel coffee cup in the cup holder, and a caption that read, "Onward." Her vending machine transaction at the Seymour northbound rest area was recorded at 7:02 in the morning. She purchased a package of Famous Amos chocolate chip cookies from coil B3. The card cleared. The cookies dropped into the tray. The delivery door stayed closed. Amanda's vehicle, a 2015 Volkswagen Jetta in a pale gold color with Tennessee plates, was parked in the first row of the passenger vehicle section, facing east. The vehicle was found by a local volunteer fire department member who was on his way to a service call in a town north of the rest area. He noticed the vehicle on Tuesday morning at roughly 9:30, and then again on Wednesday morning when he drove back past the rest area returning from the call. The vehicle had not moved. He called the Jackson County Sheriff's Office from his own truck. The investigation that followed was unusual in its intensity for a missing persons case. Amanda's family had means. Her uncle was a retired police chief from a small department in Kentucky, and he traveled to Seymour personally to oversee the effort from the family side. He coordinated with the Jackson County Sheriff and the Indiana State Police. He hired a private investigator to supplement the official search. He offered a reward of $100,000 within the first week. The reward was eventually claimed once by a man in Indianapolis who called in a false tip in hopes of securing the money. The man was charged with obstruction, and the money was never paid. Amanda's last known physical location was the vending bay of the Seymour Rest area at 7:02 in the morning on Tuesday. Her Jetta was 15 yards from the vending bay door. The distance from the vending machine to the Jetta, including the interior path through the restroom vestibule, if Amanda had used the restroom between the 2 points, was approximately 43 feet. The walk would have taken an average adult approximately 11 seconds. In the 11 seconds between the vending machine dispensing the cookies and Amanda's projected arrival at her vehicle, she vanished. The cookies remained in coil B3 for 13 days. They were retrieved and placed into evidence. They were fresh and undamaged. A piece of evidence surfaced 3 months later that has never been fully explained. In January of 2019, a truck driver stopped at a weigh station in Wisconsin reported finding a small item in the wheel well of his trailer that he believed had been there since his last route through Indiana. The item was a gold-plated earring in a distinctive teardrop shape. The driver, who had been following the case in the news because he occasionally stopped at the Seymour Rest area, recognized the earring from photographs of Amanda that had been circulated publicly. He turned it over to the Wisconsin Highway Patrol, who turned it over to the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. The earring was confirmed by Amanda's mother as one of a pair that Amanda had been wearing on the day of her disappearance. The trucker's route logs showed that his trailer had passed through the Seymour Rest area on Wednesday, October 17th, the day after Amanda's disappearance. He had parked overnight in the commercial vehicle section, approximately 80 yards from where Amanda's Jetta had been found. Investigators examined the trailer, the route, and the driver's phone records. He was cleared as a person of interest. The earring had, by some mechanism no one has explained, ended up in the wheel well of his trailer during the hours it had been parked at the rest area. The other earring has never been found. The Jackson County Sheriff who oversaw the initial case retired in 2021. The retired police chief uncle continued his private investigation for 4 years before his own death from a heart attack in early 2023. His case files are now in storage at the Oaks family home. Amanda's mother has read them multiple times. She told me in a phone conversation in the autumn of 2025 that the thing she cannot stop thinking about is her daughter's social media caption from 5:41 that morning. Onward. It still sits on her daughter's account, which has not been deleted. 6 months before Amanda's disappearance, in April of 2018, a similar event took place in a different state. Gregory Thorne, 53 years old, was a land surveyor based in Ogden, Utah. He was traveling east on Interstate 70 through the central Utah desert on Tuesday, April 17th, on his way to a job site in Grand Junction, Colorado. He had packed his truck with surveying equipment the night before: a Trimble GPS receiver, a digital level, a theodolite, a tripod, orange traffic cones, high visibility vests, measuring tapes, laminated plat maps, and a field notebook. His truck was a 2011 Ford F-250 with a utility box welded behind the cab, in a white fleet paint scheme with a small company logo on the driver door. Gregory pulled into the Green River Rest area, eastbound, at 5:12 in the morning. The rest area sits in a particularly remote section of Utah, along Interstate 70, between the town of Green River to the east and the San Rafael Swell to the west. It is surrounded by a landscape of low mesas, dry washes, and exposed sandstone with almost no vegetation taller than sagebrush. The pre-dawn sky over this country in April is deep and cold, and lit only by stars and the distant haze of the Milky Way. The rest area itself is an oasis. It has restrooms, a small picnic pavilion under a wooden sunshade, a vending bay, and a long paved loop for large vehicles. The vending log recorded Gregory's transaction at 5:18. He purchased a 12-ounce can of Mountain Dew from coil A5. The transaction cleared. The can dropped. The removal sensor never triggered. His truck remained in the loop. It was observed by a married couple driving a motorhome who arrived at the rest area at approximately 7 in the morning, used the restrooms, made breakfast in their coach, and left by 8. The husband later told investigators that he had noticed the white utility truck and had assumed the driver was asleep inside the cab. He had noticed no movement, but he had also not looked closely. At 9:40, an Emery County Sheriff's deputy conducting a routine patrol of the rest area noticed the truck. He observed it again on his return trip at 11:15. By 1 in the afternoon, he had run the plate and contacted the dispatcher. By 2, he had made entry into the truck using a Slim Jim. The interior of the cab was undisturbed. A large thermos, 3/4 full of black coffee, sat in the cup holder. Gregory's hard hat sat on the passenger seat. His day planner was open to the Tuesday page on the dashboard, with handwritten notes about the Grand Junction job. His cellular phone was in the door pocket. His keys were not in the ignition. His wallet was not anywhere inside the vehicle. The wallet was found 2 days later. It was inside the restroom of the rest area, specifically in the men's room, in the 3rd stall from the door. It was resting on top of the porcelain tank of the toilet. It had not been opened. The cash, the driver's license, the company credit cards, and a laminated union card were all present. Gregory's personal credit card, however, was not in the wallet. Gregory's personal credit card was the card he had used at the vending machine at 5:18. The personal credit card was never found. The Mountain Dew was retrieved from Coil A5's delivery tray by a service technician 4 days later. It was warm. It had been sitting in the tray in afternoon desert sun, filtered through the vending bay's tinted windows. The can had not been opened. The search for Gregory lasted 9 days. Emery County is a vast and thinly populated county. The terrain around the Green River Rest Area is, in the judgment of search and rescue professionals, some of the most difficult search country in the continental United States. A man can walk in any direction from that rest area and be in country where no one lives, where no roads exist, where water sources are seasonal and unreliable, and where a body would not be found except by chance for years or decades. The search was concluded without result. Gregory's wife, who had been married to him for 29 years and who had 3 adult children from the marriage, was interviewed by the Emery County Sheriff's Office. She told them her husband was, as far as she knew, happy. She told them he had not been drinking. She told them he was looking forward to the Grand Junction job because the surveying work was going to take him into a beautiful canyon area he had wanted to see for years. The detail she kept returning to, she told me in a phone call in May of 2024, was the personal credit card. She said Gregory had always been meticulous about separating his business and personal finances. She said he would not have used his personal card for a vending machine purchase unless his company card had declined for some reason. She said she had checked the company card statement carefully after the disappearance. It had not declined on that day. It had not been used at all that morning. It had still had a positive balance, paid off on time at the end of every billing cycle for the previous 9 years. The company card was one of the cards sitting in the wallet on top of the toilet tank. Gregory had, for reasons she could not explain, chosen to use his personal card for a 99-cent soda at a remote desert rest area at 5:18 in the morning on a Tuesday. She asked me, toward the end of our call, whether I thought her husband had meant to leave her. I told her that nothing in the case file suggested a voluntary departure, and that every piece of physical evidence suggested a sudden and unexpected interruption. I told her what I believed to be true. She thanked me. She did not say anything more. 6 months after our call, I received a letter from a law firm in Salt Lake City. The letter, written by an attorney representing Gregory's wife and her 3 adult children, informed me that the family had collectively decided to stop participating in any external discussion of the case. The letter cited emotional exhaustion, the strain on the adult children's marriages, and the repeated reopening of grief each time a new journalist or researcher reached out. The letter was firm and polite. It asked me not to contact the family again. It asked me not to name Gregory, or his wife, or his children in any further public material. I was given permission to retain the information I had already received. and to include it in this investigation, but no additional material would be shared, and no corrections would be permitted. I have honored the request. Gregory's wife's name and the names of the children do not appear here. The family has not responded to any communication since the letter. I do not know how they are doing. There is one more detail from Gregory's case that Mr. Renwick found in the archival credit card records that I mention only because it is a physical anomaly the family file does not include. The transaction at coil A5 registered at 5:18 and 7 seconds. The card processor's host log, when Mr. Renwick obtained it through a FOIA request to the bank's payment processor, shows a duplicate transaction identifier issued at 5:18 and 13 seconds, 6 seconds after the initial purchase. The duplicate was flagged by the processor as an error, rejected, and removed from the live log within the same second. But the removed entry remained in the backup log, which is retained for 7 years by federal regulation. The removed entry shows an identical transaction, same card, same coil, same amount, same cryptographic signature, with a timestamp 6 seconds after the first. No physical transaction could have produced a duplicate. The vending machine's selection registry confirms that only one selection was made. The payment processor's engineers, when asked by Mr. Renwick, could not explain the duplicate entry. They speculated about network latency artifacts, cryptographic hash collisions, and backup log corruption. None of the explanations fit the signature of the duplicate, which was perfect, and which was present only in the backup log, and not in any live system. The duplicate exists. It was not produced by Gregory, who by 5:18 and 13 seconds had already begun walking away from coil A5. It was not produced by the machine, which registers only live transactions. It was produced by something, and it sits in a backup log at a bank's data center in New Jersey, and no one knows what it is. The 7th case returns us to the eastern part of the country. It took place on Tuesday, August 22nd of 2017, at a rest area on Interstate 10 in southwest Louisiana, near the small town of Iowa, in Calcasieu Parish. The morning in question was humid, with an overnight low of 76 degrees and a forecast high of 94, under a thick haze of late summer atmospheric moisture that was not yet a storm, but was, according to the National Weather Service archive, predicted to become one by late afternoon. Joyce Weatherington, 68 years old, was a retired school librarian from Beaumont, Texas. She was driving east on Interstate 10 toward Baton Rouge to visit her daughter and a newborn grandchild. The grandchild had been born 11 days earlier, and Joyce had originally planned to make the trip the weekend after the birth. But a heat-related power outage in Baton Rouge had caused her daughter to ask her to delay the trip by a week. The Tuesday trip was the rescheduled visit. Joyce was driving a 2014 Toyota Camry in a pearl white paint scheme with Texas plates. She had left Beaumont at 4:45 in the morning, specifically to avoid the worst of the afternoon heat during the drive. The distance from Beaumont to Baton Rouge was approximately 220 miles, about 3.5 hours at comfortable highway speed. She pulled into the Iowa-Louisiana rest area at 6:06 in the morning. The rest area is a standard Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development facility with a covered picnic area, restrooms, a Louisiana Welcome Center that was closed during the early morning hours, and a vending bay at the front of the building. The surrounding landscape is flat coastal Louisiana rice farmland, interlaced with canals, drainage ditches, and dense cypress wetlands. The area is known for mosquitoes, alligators, and extreme summer heat. The interstate at that location runs on a long elevated causeway over swamp for approximately 10 miles in each direction. The vending log recorded Joyce's transaction at 6:10 in the morning. She purchased a 16-ounce bottle of Dr. Pepper from coil D5. The purchase completed. The bottle dropped. No one retrieved it. Joyce's Camry was parked in the second row of the parking area, approximately 40 yards from the vending bay. It was noticed by a tourism volunteer arriving for her 8 in the morning shift at the Welcome Center. The volunteer, A 62-year-old retired school teacher who had worked the Welcome Center for 6 years noted the Texas plates and the fact that the car hadn't been there when she had left the facility the evening before. The volunteer walked by the car, looked through the driver's side window, and saw a purse on the passenger seat and a coffee travel mug in the cup holder. She assumed the owner was inside the building. After an hour had passed, the Welcome Center volunteer knocked on the restroom doors, called out for anyone inside, and received no response. By 10 in the morning, the Welcome Center had contacted the Louisiana State Police. A trooper from the Lake Charles post arrived by 10:45. The vehicle inspection followed the same general shape as the previous cases. Purse with wallet, cellular phone, paper map of Louisiana folded to the relevant pages, a small gift bag on the rear seat containing a stuffed giraffe and a knitted blue blanket, clearly intended for the new grandchild. Keys were not in the ignition. Keys were not in the purse. Keys were found several hours later by a search team on the boardwalk that extended from the Welcome Center out over a section of cypress swamp toward a small elevated observation platform typically used by travelers to view birds and alligators. The keys were lying flat on the wooden slats of the boardwalk, approximately 60 feet from the Welcome Center. The observation platform had a railing that enclosed the entire perimeter, with pickets at 6-inch intervals. A person could not accidentally fall. A person could, with effort, climb over. The railing was thoroughly checked by the search team for signs of a climb. No fiber evidence, no scuff marks, no handprints on the upper rail beyond the routine wear patterns consistent with tourists placing their hands on it to steady themselves while looking out. The water below the platform was searched by divers and by a swamp boat crew over 3 days. The bottom of the cypress swamp in that area is silt and mud, with cypress knees and submerged logs. Visibility is essentially zero. Alligators are present year-round. Nothing was recovered. The Dr. Pepper remained in the delivery tray of the vending machine for 6 days. The service technician collected it on his scheduled visit. It was warm. The bottle was sealed. It had sat in the vending bay through 3 consecutive 90-degree afternoons with only partial air conditioning. The plastic had begun to develop the slight cloudiness that accompanies prolonged heat exposure of certain carbonated beverages. Joyce's daughter, who was waiting in Baton Rouge with an 11-day-old infant at the time of the disappearance, was contacted by the state police that afternoon. She drove to the Iowa rest area that night with her husband and the baby. She identified her mother's Camry. She identified the gift bag. She confirmed that the stuffed giraffe had been her mother's gift, purchased at a local Beaumont toy store 2 weeks earlier in anticipation of the trip. She told me in an email exchange in the autumn of 2024 that the detail that still undoes her is that her mother never drank Dr. Pepper. She said that if she had to name the single beverage her mother had most disliked, it would have been Dr. Pepper. She said that her mother, when offered a drink at a restaurant, had a specific joke she told that ended with the punchline about Dr. Pepper being the only soft drink she had refused to serve in her classroom during lunch periods for 40 years, because she considered the flavor inappropriate for children's taste buds. She said the joke was a family joke, told dozens of times. She said she had never once seen her mother purchase a Dr. Pepper in her 68 years of life. One further detail belongs in Joyce's file. In the summer of 2023, the daughter gave her own newborn child's saliva sample to a commercial DNA ancestry service. She was hoping to identify health markers for the child's pediatrician. The service returned the standard ancestry breakdown and, as a side effect, matched her to a set of third cousins she had not known existed. The family tree the service reconstructed placed her mother's biological origin in a different state, with different parents, than the birth certificate on file. Joyce, the daughter learned, had been adopted as an infant, a fact Joyce had apparently never known herself. The biological mother was still alive, living in East Texas, 94 years old. The daughter drove to meet her in November of 2023. The biological mother was told, gently, that her daughter had gone missing. She cried for a long time and then asked if Joyce had been happy. The daughter said yes. They have stayed in occasional contact. The biological mother sends cards on the birthday of the grandchild. She has not offered any information that would help explain what happened at the Iowa rest area. She does not know anything. But she exists, and she is Joyce's mother, and in the small records of this investigation, she is the only new relationship that has come into being because of the disappearance. The daughter told me she does not know what to do with that. The pattern was holding by the 8th case. The wallet left behind. The keys placed somewhere visible. The purchase that made no sense. By the 8th case, I had stopped being surprised by the contradictions and had begun to expect them. The 8th case took us north and west, into Montana. Patrick Elwood was 49 years old, a construction foreman from Billings, Montana, working on a commercial build out for a retail chain in the Dillon area. The project had required him to make the drive from Billings to Dillon twice a week for 6 months, always on Tuesdays and Fridays. Tuesday, January 12th of 2016, was his 42nd such drive. He had made the exact same trip, at roughly the same time of day, along the exact same route, 41 times before. His route took him south on Interstate 90 from Billings to Bozeman, then west and then south on Interstate 90 and Interstate 15, with a rest area stop at a place called the Beaverhead Rest Area on Interstate 15, approximately 20 miles north of Dillon. The Beaverhead Rest Area is a small Montana Department of Transportation facility built on a small rise overlooking a long section of the Big Hole River Valley. The view from the picnic pavilion extends 40 miles on clear days. On the morning of Tuesday, January 12th of 2016, the visibility at the rest area was less than 100 yards due to a ground fog pooling in the valley from overnight cold and river moisture. The air temperature was 15 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind was calm. Patrick pulled into the rest area at 5:47 in the morning. The rest area vending log recorded his transaction at 5:53. He purchased a bottle of Propel Fitness water from Coil B1. The transaction cleared. The bottle dropped. The removal sensor never triggered. Patrick's truck, a 2013 Dodge Ram 1500 in a dark blue paint scheme with a Montana Habitat for Humanity decal on the back window, remained in the lot. It was approximately the only vehicle in the lot for most of the morning. Winter travel on that section of Interstate 15 is thin. The rest area gets more use in summer from Yellowstone tourists than in winter from anyone. A Montana Department of Transportation plow truck observed the pickup at 7:10. The operator did not stop. He reported it to dispatch as a routine observation. By 9:30, the pickup was still there. A highway patrol trooper arrived at 10:15. The same inspection shape followed. Cold engine, unlocked doors, keys in the ignition, cellular phone on the center console, wallet in the glove compartment, not on his person, a thermos of coffee in the cup holder, a paper lunch bag on the passenger seat containing a ham sandwich and an apple. The sandwich had not been unwrapped. The search began in heavy winter conditions that afternoon. By Wednesday, the ground fog had lifted and aerial assets could be deployed. By Thursday, a full ground team of more than 60 searchers was working the rest area, the adjacent interstate shoulders, the frozen ditches, and the first quarter mile of ranch land to the east and west. The Big Hole River, which ran through the valley below the rest area, was partially frozen with open sections of moving water near the bridge. Search divers entered the open water on Friday and Saturday. They found nothing. The Propel water remained in Coil B1 for 5 days before a technician arrived to investigate a report of a minor mechanical issue with a different machine in the bay. He discovered the untouched bottle during his visit and reported it to the local sheriff's office. It had frozen solid over the intervening nights. The label was slightly damaged by frost expansion. The plastic was intact. Patrick's wife had been expecting him at a work site in Dillon by 6 in the morning. He had not arrived. She had been informed of the missing vehicle by early afternoon. She drove to the rest area from Billings the same day. She told me, in a phone conversation in the winter of 2024, that the detail she could not stop thinking about was that her husband knew every square foot of the Beaverhead rest area. She said he had been stopping there twice a week for 6 months. She said he used the men's room, refilled his coffee thermos, bought a water from the same machine, and left. She said he had a routine. She said she had asked him, on one of their last phone calls the Saturday before, whether he was getting tired of the drive. She said he had laughed and told her that the rest area volunteer always said hello to him by name. She said the volunteer was a woman of about 70 who had worked the Beaverhead Welcome Center for years. The volunteer was interviewed as part of the investigation. She confirmed that she knew Patrick by sight and by first name. She said that on the morning of Tuesday, January 12th of 2016, she had not yet arrived at the facility when he had come through. Her shift had started at 6:30. Patrick's vending transaction had been at 5:53. She said that if she had been there, she would have noticed him, because she always noticed him. She said the fog had been very heavy that morning and that she had arrived at her shift to find the rest area empty of travelers. She said she had thought the fog was the reason. She said she had sat in the Welcome Center for her entire 4-hour shift that morning and only 2 travelers had come through. An elderly man in a pickup truck who had used the restroom and then left, and a woman in a sedan with 2 small children who had asked about directions to the Idaho state line. She had noticed Patrick's Dodge in the lot. She said she had assumed he was using the restroom and would come to say hello, as he usually did. She said she had waited. She said he had not come in. She said in her interview that she had felt an increasing unease as the morning passed and the truck remained in the lot with no sign of its driver. She said she had walked out to the lot around 8 in the morning to look at the truck. She said the driver door had been unlocked. She said she had not opened it. She said she had gone back inside. The trooper asked her, in the interview, why she had not called at 8. She said she had thought Patrick might be sleeping in the truck. She said he sometimes took naps. She said she had decided to wait another hour. She said she had not expected that waiting another hour would mean that no one would ever see him again. She cried during the interview. The transcript noted the crying. Patrick's family continues to search. His wife sold their house in Billings in 2018 and moved to a small rental on the outskirts of Dillon, 5 miles from the Beaverhead rest area. She told me in a phone call in the spring of 2025 that she drives to the rest area most mornings. She sits in the parking lot for 30 or 40 minutes. She watches the vending bay. She said she knows how it sounds. She said she does not care anymore how it sounds. She said she has a feeling her husband will come back the same way he left, and she wants to be there when it happens. There is one additional detail in Patrick's case that I want to record plainly. In the summer of 2018, 2.5 years after Patrick's disappearance, his brother in Montana was cleaning out a storage unit he had inherited from their father's estate. In a cardboard box of loose items that had been there since their father's death in 2011, the brother found a hotel room key card. The card was plastic, of the type common to mid-range chain hotels, with a magnetic stripe and a small logo in one corner. The logo belonged to a chain with locations in Delaware, Maryland, and New Jersey. The card was from a specific property in Dover, Delaware. The brother took it to a Billings detective working the case, who contacted the Delaware property through standard channels. The Dover property confirmed that the card had been issued on a room registered to Patrick Elwood on the date of February 3rd of 2016, 3 weeks after Patrick had disappeared from a Montana rest area. The registration had been paid for in cash. The photograph on the driver's license presented at the front desk did not match Patrick Elwood. The room had been used for one night, and the card returned. The chain had no further record of the transaction. Patrick's credit cards had never been used after his disappearance. His bank account had never been accessed. His cellular phone had remained at the Beaverhead rest area. But someone, on a night 3 weeks after Patrick was last seen, had presented a driver's license in Patrick's name at a hotel desk in Dover, Delaware, 2,000 miles from where his truck sat abandoned in Montana, and had been issued a key. The detective put the key card in Patrick's file. He did not pursue the lead further. He told me in a phone call that the trail was 3 weeks cold by the time it surfaced 3 years later, and he had no way to reach back through that much silence. The 9th case took place in Kentucky on Tuesday, May 19th of 2015. The subject was a 58-year-old off-duty long-haul truck driver named Robert Callaway from London, Kentucky. He had been returning from a delivery run to the Great Lakes region and had chosen, on his own schedule and not under dispatch, to stop at the Mount Vernon rest area, southbound, on Interstate 75 in Rockcastle County. He had not been carrying a commercial load. His tractor was deadheading back to his home base. His trailer had been dropped at a Michigan yard the day before. Robert was, by the account of his former colleagues, one of the most safety-conscious drivers in his company's fleet. He had received no citations in 31 years of commercial driving. He was a trainer for younger drivers. He was a volunteer with a nonprofit that provided road safety presentations to high schools across central Kentucky. He was known for a particular habit that had become a running joke in his company. He did not use commercial truck stops for his personal breaks. He preferred state rest areas. He said they were quieter. He said the coffee at commercial truck stops gave him heartburn. He said he liked the landscaping at rest areas. The vending log at the Mount Vernon southbound rest area recorded Robert's transaction at 6:50 in the morning. He purchased a package of Planters honey-roasted peanuts from coil F2. The payment went through. The package dropped into the delivery tray. Nothing else registered. Robert's tractor, a 2012 Freightliner Cascadia in a company red paint scheme with the carrier's logo on the door, was parked in the commercial vehicle section. He had set the parking brake. He had left the APU unit, which is the auxiliary power supply that keeps the cab climate and electronics running while the main engine is off, running to maintain the cab temperature. He had locked the driver door. He had taken the keys to the APU with him. The tractor remained in the lot with the APU running for nearly 8 hours before a Kentucky State Police trooper noticed the unusual length of the stop. The trooper observed that the tractor had been at the rest area since his first pass that morning and had not moved by his afternoon pass. He obtained a phone number for the carrier from the door markings and contacted dispatch. Dispatch confirmed that Robert had checked out from the previous delivery on Monday afternoon and had not yet checked back in at the home yard. Dispatch had expected him later that evening and had not yet flagged the absence as a concern. The trooper asked dispatch to send the carrier's spare key to the tractor. The key arrived by courier at approximately 6:30 in the evening. The trooper opened the cab. The cab was meticulously clean, as was typical of Robert's work habits. A thermos of coffee in the center console, still warm because the APU had maintained the cab climate. A paperback thriller novel on the passenger seat, closed, with a bookmark near the middle. A reusable cloth shopping bag on the floor of the passenger side, containing 2 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, and a travel-size toothpaste. His wallet in the back pocket of a folded pair of jeans in the bag. His cellular phone on the dashboard, plugged into the charging cable, at 61% battery. The APU keys in the cup holder. The keys to the tractor, including the ignition key, not in the cab. His tractor ignition keys were recovered the next day by a janitorial crew cleaning the men's restroom. The keys had been placed on the white porcelain rim of the sink in the second sink position from the entry door. They had not been tossed there or dropped there. They had been placed there with deliberation. The keychain featured a small brass medallion commemorating Robert's 1 million mile safety award from his company. It had sat on the rim of the sink from sometime after 6:50 Tuesday morning until sometime before 7:30 Wednesday morning, when the cleaning crew arrived. The Planters peanuts were retrieved from coil F2 8 days later. They were sealed. They had not been touched. The search was conducted by the Rockcastle County Sheriff's Office, Kentucky State Police, and volunteers organized by Robert's company. Co-workers, many of them long-haul drivers themselves, cleared their schedules to participate. The search covered the rest area, the wooded slopes behind it, the Rockcastle River, and 4 miles of interstate shoulders in each direction. It lasted 7 days. It recovered nothing beyond the keys. Robert's wife told me in a phone conversation in the spring of 2025 that her husband had been a man of habits. She said every one of his habits made sense. She said he had a reason for everything he did. She said the detail about the peanuts had confused the investigation more than any other detail. Robert had a severe peanut allergy. He had been diagnosed at age 7. He had carried an epinephrine auto-injector every day of his adult life. The auto-injector was found in his wallet by investigators, current and not expired. He had not used it. He had no reason to be in the vicinity of a peanut product. He had, in 31 years of driving, never once purchased a snack that contained peanuts. His wife said she has run the scenario through her head thousands of times. She said the only explanation she has been able to construct is that her husband, for reasons she cannot guess, selected the wrong coil on the vending machine. She said this would require that he had not looked at the price tags, which display the product names clearly in modern vending machines. She said Robert read everything carefully. He was the kind of man who read ingredient labels at the grocery store for 5 minutes before putting a product in his cart. He was the kind of man who never, she said, would have bought peanuts by accident. I asked her if she had any theories that went beyond the accidental selection. She said she did not. She said she had decided, several years ago, that there were some questions she was not going to keep asking, because the repeated asking was affecting her sleep and her health. She said she thought about her husband every day. She said she did not think about the peanuts anymore. The signature was there. By the 9th case, the signature had become predictive. The 10th case moved us into the Appalachian foothills of North Carolina. The rest area sat on Interstate 77 in Surry County, near the town of Elkin, in a region of rolling tobacco country where the Blue Ridge Mountains begin to rise on the western horizon. The date was Tuesday, June 24th of 2014. The subject was 40-year-old Thomas Edmonson, a college administrator from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, who was driving north on Interstate 77 to attend a professional conference in Charleston, West Virginia. Thomas was the university registrar for a mid-sized liberal arts college in Winston-Salem. He was widely respected by his colleagues, known for his exceptional memory, his meticulous record-keeping, and his patience in dealing with student and faculty requests. He had held the registrar position for 11 years. He was married with 2 teenage children. He had been looking forward to the Charleston conference because he was delivering a paper on digital transition in academic record-keeping, the first major paper he had delivered at a national conference. He left Winston-Salem at 5:30 in the morning. The drive to Charleston would have taken approximately 3.5 hours via Interstate 77 North to the West Virginia state line, and then Interstate 77 continuing through the mountain section into Charleston. The Elkin Rest area, northbound, was approximately 35 miles into his drive, a natural first stop for coffee and restroom. Thomas pulled into the rest area at 6:03 in the morning. His vehicle was a 2011 Honda Accord in a silver paint scheme with a North Carolina University parking decal on the rear windshield. The vending log recorded his transaction at 6:08 in the morning. He purchased a 20-ounce bottle of Powerade, lemon lime flavor, from Coil C4. The card cleared. The bottle dropped. The delivery door never opened. By 7 in the morning, the Accord was still in the lot. By 8, it had been noticed by a North Carolina Department of Transportation worker who was emptying trash receptacles. By 9, he had reported it to the Surry County Sheriff's Office. A deputy arrived at 9:45. The routine repeated itself. Unlocked driver door. Keys missing. Wallet in the glove compartment. Phone in the cup holder, powered on, at 54% battery. Briefcase on the passenger seat, containing the printed paper, the conference materials, and a small spiral notebook with handwritten notes in a tight, disciplined hand. The notebook was open to a blank page. Thomas's keys were found 3 days later by a hiker on a short trail that extended from the rest area property line into a small wooded area to the north. The keys were hanging from a small forked branch of a red oak approximately half a mile from the rest area. Someone had carefully placed the keychain over the fork so that the keys dangled at approximately eye level for an adult. The keys had not been thrown or dropped. They had been hung there deliberately by a human being. The trail itself had been searched on day 1 of the operation. The keys had not been on the tree then. Someone had placed them there between day 1 and day 3. The search was conducted by the Surry County Sheriff's Office with assistance from the North Carolina State Highway Patrol and a volunteer search team from a neighboring county. The search area expanded each day to cover more of the wooded terrain north of the rest area. By day 6, the search area had extended more than 2 miles into the woods, which in that part of North Carolina are thick with rhododendron understory, mountain laurel, and dense oak hardwood canopy. No trace of Thomas was found. The Powerade was retrieved from coil C4 on day 10. It was warm and sealed. It had sat in the delivery tray through 10 consecutive June afternoons. The bottle was slightly deformed from heat. Thomas's wife gave me a long interview in the summer of 2025. She told me the detail that haunted her was the blank page in the spiral notebook. She said her husband wrote constantly. She said he made notes on everything. She said the fact that he had pulled out the notebook, opened it to a clean page, and then left it there without writing anything was, in her words, deeply out of character. She said she had asked herself many times whether he had been about to write something when he had been interrupted. She said she had sometimes wondered what he would have written if he had been given one more minute. She said she had built several different sentences in her mind over the years. She had not settled on any of them. She told me that her 2 children, who were teenagers at the time of the disappearance and who were now in their mid-20s, each had different ideas about what had happened to their father. Her son believed the disappearance had been voluntary. Her daughter believed the disappearance had been violent. Neither child, she said, had been able to construct a scenario that made sense of the specific evidence. She said the notebook page, in particular, remained the hardest detail for all 3 of them. I asked her what she believed. She said she did not know. She said she had stopped trying to know. She said the only thing she was certain of was that her husband had not chosen to leave her or their children. She said she was certain because of the notebook. She said no one planning a departure opens a notebook. The conference paper was never delivered. The paper itself was recovered from the briefcase and, at the request of the college, was published posthumously in the Association Journal. Thomas's name appears on it. A brief editorial note at the end of the paper mentions that the author was unable to present the paper in person due to personal reasons. The editorial note does not specify what the personal reasons were. The 11th case moved us back into the Rust Belt, specifically to Interstate 44 in central Missouri, at a rest area near the town of Rolla in Phelps County. The date was Tuesday, February 26th of 2013. The subject was 46-year-old Dennis Verlin, a regional sales representative for an agricultural equipment manufacturer based in Peoria, Illinois. He was making a sales trip from Peoria to a distributor in Joplin, Missouri, a drive of approximately 450 miles that would take him most of the day. Dennis had been with the agricultural equipment company for 22 years. He was well liked by his colleagues and by the distributors he called on. He was, by the account of his friends, a man of exceptional physical and mental stamina who enjoyed the long drives that his job required. He had 2 adult children from a previous marriage, was currently unmarried, and lived alone in a small apartment in Peoria. The morning of Tuesday, February 26th, was cold, with a temperature of 19 degrees Fahrenheit at the rest area at his arrival time. A light snow had fallen overnight, leaving approximately an inch on the ground at the rest area grounds, most of which had been cleared from the parking areas by a maintenance crew earlier that morning. The sky was clear. The sun had not yet risen. Dennis arrived at the rest area at 6:36 in the morning. The vending log recorded his transaction at 6:41. He purchased a bag of Sun Chips, Harvest cheddar flavor, from coil B4. The payment went through. The bag dropped into the tray. No removal was ever recorded. His vehicle, a 2008 GMC Acadia in a champagne paint scheme with Illinois plates, remained in the rest area parking lot for the rest of the day. It was noted at 10:15 by a Missouri State Highway Patrol trooper during a routine rest area welfare check. The trooper logged the vehicle and continued his patrol. He noted it again on his return trip at 1:30. By 3 in the afternoon, the trooper had called the Acadia's license plate in to dispatch and had attempted to make contact with the vehicle's owner through the carrier's OnStar service. The service was able to confirm that the vehicle was not moving. The service was not able to determine whether the vehicle's owner was inside. The trooper was permitted to open the vehicle remotely using the service, and he did so at 3:47 in the afternoon. The Acadia's interior was organized with the particular care of a veteran road warrior. A leather portfolio on the passenger seat, a travel coffee tumbler in the cup holder, a second travel coffee tumbler in the second cup holder, a briefcase on the floor of the passenger side containing sales literature, a laptop in a protective sleeve, and a small box of business cards, a pair of leather gloves on the dashboard, a wool scarf draped over the headrest of the driver's seat, a long winter coat in the back seat, laid flat, a tan knit hat on the center console. Dennis had been traveling in February in the Midwest and had been prepared for the cold. His keys were not in the ignition. His wallet was not in the vehicle. His cellular phone was on the passenger seat, powered on, showing 3 missed calls from his sales manager at the Peoria office. The keys were never found. The wallet was found 6 days later in an unusual location. A Phelps County Sheriff's deputy was responding to an unrelated report of a minor traffic incident approximately 17 miles east of the rest area, on Interstate 44. During the response, he noticed a folded leather object lying on the shoulder of the interstate, approximately a quarter mile from the incident. He stopped to retrieve it. It was Dennis's wallet. It contained his driver's license, 3 credit cards, $184 in cash, a photograph of his 2 children, and the receipt from the vending machine transaction at 6:41 that morning. Time stamped and intact. The wallet had been either transported 17 miles from the rest area or thrown from a moving vehicle at some point in the preceding 6 days. Snow conditions that week included 2 additional snowfalls and a warming trend. Forensic examination estimated the wallet had been on the interstate shoulder for 4 to 6 days. The distance between the rest area and the location where the wallet was found was approximately 17 miles, along a section of Interstate 44 that was heavily traveled by commercial vehicles. Dennis had not been in that section of interstate under his own power, based on the complete absence of any other trace. Someone, at some point between the morning of Tuesday, February 26th, and the afternoon of Monday, March 4th, had transported Dennis's wallet 17 miles from the rest area to the side of the interstate, and had either dropped it or thrown it from a vehicle. The sun chips were retrieved from the vending machine on day 9. The bag was sealed. It had not been touched. The search for Dennis was conducted by the Phelps County Sheriff's Office, with assistance from the Missouri State Highway Patrol and the Illinois State Police. It included the rest area, the interstate shoulders in both directions for 10 miles, the forested ridges and ravines of the eastern Ozark foothills south of the rest area, and a systematic review of security camera footage from commercial truck stops and fuel stations on Interstate 44 between the rest area and the wallet recovery location. No evidence of Dennis was found in any camera review. No trace of his physical person was recovered anywhere. Dennis's children were adults at the time of his case. His daughter was 31, a teacher in Peoria. His son was 28, an accountant in Chicago. Both had had good relationships with their father. Both had spoken to him the weekend before his trip. Neither had noticed any unusual behavior or concerning communication from him. His daughter wrote to me, after learning of this investigation, a long and thoughtful email. She asked me whether I had any hypothesis about how the wallet had come to be 17 miles away. I told her I did not have a hypothesis. I told her I had been thinking about it for months. I told her that of all the details in all 12 cases, the 17-mile wallet displacement was the one I had spent the most time trying to reconcile with any plausible chain of physical causation. I could not reconcile it. She wrote back and said she understood. She said she had been trying to reconcile it for 12 years. The 12th case is the oldest. It is also the shortest to describe, because it is the case for which the available documentation is the thinnest. On Tuesday, February 26th of 2013, earlier on the same day that Dennis Verlin would disappear 720 miles to the east, another man vanished from a rest area on Interstate 44 in Missouri. We do not have the documentary evidence to confirm that the two events were connected. We have only the vending log entry that Mr. Renwick turned up in his archival work, which shows a successful and uncollected transaction from a rest area approximately 100 miles west of the Rolla facility at 5:53 in the morning on the same date. The subject of that transaction has never been identified. No matching missing person report was filed. No vehicle was abandoned at the rest area that day, according to the records we have been able to locate. The vending log entry exists. The video footage from that rest area for that week has been destroyed in the normal rotation of state archival retention. The service technician who collected the untouched product, a bag of Chex Mix in the traditional flavor, no longer works for the vending company. I mention this case, incomplete and unverifiable as it is, because Mr. Renwick insisted on including it. He said the transaction fit the signature perfectly. He said the absence of an accompanying missing person report suggested that the subject, whoever that subject was, had not been close enough to family or co-workers for a disappearance to have been noticed. He said that somewhere in the United States, a human being was absent on a Tuesday morning in February of 2013 from a life no one had followed closely enough to report. He said he could not prove the disappearance. He could only prove the vending transaction. I have included his point without being able to independently verify it. That brings the documented total to 11 confirmed cases and 1 unconfirmed adjacent case, occurring on 12 separate Tuesdays across 11 years, along 8 interstate corridors in 12 states, all involving a vending machine transaction with an untouched product, all involving a subsequent disappearance that has never been explained. I want to slow down now. I want to describe what these 12 cases, taken together, have done to the people who are still living with them. There is a specific grief that belongs to families of the missing. It is not the same as the grief of a death. It has no ceremony, no casket, no burial, no plot of land the family can visit. There is, instead, an indefinite waiting. I have spoken over the past 19 months with 11 of the 12 families. 9 sought mental health support after their loved one disappeared. 7 were unable to continue past the first few sessions because the standard frameworks for processing grief did not match what they were feeling. The counselor wanted them to accept that the person was gone. They could not accept it, not because they were in denial, but because they had not been given enough information to accept anything. If someone you know is living with a missing person, the best thing you can do is keep the name in conversation. Do not stop saying it because you fear the name will hurt. What the family needs is for the name to be present, not buried in polite silence. Ask about them. Offer to look at the case file if they want company while reviewing it. Offer to drive with them to the rest area if they want to go. The evidence does not permit them to move on. It asks you not to move on either. I now want to work through the conventional explanations for what happened to these 12 people, because I owe the viewer a fair accounting of what has been considered by professionals and what has been ruled out. The first explanation was voluntary disappearance. People do occasionally walk away from their lives. The cases in this investigation do not fit the profile. Voluntary departures involve prior financial planning, withdrawn cash reserves, and quiet communication with a single confidant. None of these 12 subjects showed any of those markers. Their finances were in order. Their personal items remained at the rest areas. No confidant has ever surfaced. The hypothesis fails. The second explanation was a medical emergency, a stroke, a cardiac event, or a sudden decompensation leading to confused wandering off the rest area property. This is plausible for perhaps 4 of the 12 subjects by age alone. It does not explain the wallets left behind, the keys placed on bathroom sinks or tree branches, the careful arrangement of personal items inside locked vehicles, or the complete absence of remains despite years of searches. People who collapse from medical events at rest areas are almost always recovered within days. 12 such subjects across 11 years with 0 remains ruled this out as the common factor. The third explanation was human trafficking. Interstate rest areas have been identified in federal reports as occasional transfer points, but the profile of trafficking victims, vulnerable young people, often immigrants, often with existing relationships to the traffickers, does not match these 12. Middle-aged and older American professionals with stable lives are not the demographic selected, and trafficking involves the rapid removal of the victim in a vehicle controlled by the traffickers. The subject's own vehicles stayed at the rest areas. The hypothesis fails. The fourth explanation was staged abduction for insurance fraud. Life insurance does not pay out on missing persons for many years after the fact, and in some states never pays out without confirmed death. The benefit is low and the cost is high. Most of the 12 families have not even filed for presumed death declarations, which is inconsistent with a fraud scheme. The hypothesis does not fit. The fifth explanation was wildlife predation. Mountain lions, bears, or large predators do occasionally kill humans in the United States. 6 of the 12 rest areas are in regions where predator presence is possible, but predator attacks leave physical evidence, remains, blood spatter, drag marks, fiber. None of the 12 searches found any of it. The hypothesis is not supported. The sixth explanation was institutional failure of observation. A trooper or volunteer observed something and failed to report it. I examined the interview records for each case. Where institutional failure occurred, it was the slow response to an abandoned vehicle, not a failure to observe the disappearance itself. The subjects vanished in windows of minutes. No one was present to observe those specific minutes. The hypothesis shifts blame without explaining the underlying event. 6 conventional explanations. None fit all 12 cases. What remains unexplained is how 12 American adults purchased small items from vending machines on Tuesday mornings and then ceased to be locatable by any method known to modern investigation. The transactions are documented. The products remain in evidence. The subjects do not. There is one more pattern I have to describe before the observations, because the observations will not make sense until this pattern is laid out. Every one of the 12 disappearances happened on a Tuesday. I did not say this up front. I said it only twice, after the first 3 cases and again in passing around the middle. I wanted you to move through the cases the way Mr. Renwick and I did, noticing the day at the top of each file, setting it aside, moving on, until by the 7th or 8th case, you could not set it aside anymore. Every file, Tuesday, every transaction, Tuesday morning, 4 in the morning to 10 in the morning, across 12 states, across 11 years, across 8 interstate corridors. Tuesday. Mr. Renwick sent the clustering to a mathematician at Purdue University. She ran a bootstrap resampling on base rates of weekday travel across the federal interstate system. Tuesday is one of the lighter travel days of the American week. Truck traffic peaks Thursday. RV traffic peaks Friday. Commuter traffic peaks Monday. The probability of 12 independent rest area disappearances over 11 years all landing on Tuesdays, given the actual base rates, came back at 1 in several hundred million. She added a handwritten note to her email, stating that coincidences of this magnitude do occur, but that when they occur, they are almost always a sign of an unidentified underlying variable. She did not speculate on what that variable might be. Neither will I. I want to share 4 observations that were collected from witnesses and instruments at 4 of these 12 rest areas during the investigations. I saved these for the end because they do not fit cleanly into any of the case narratives. They were filed as supplementary reports. None of them was followed up. They are presented here without interpretation. Observation 1 comes from Walter Ashby's case in Tennessee. A tourism volunteer at the Buffalo Valley Welcome Center spoke with Walter at 6:58 in the morning, roughly 8 minutes before the vending transaction. She gave him a Tennessee state road map. When she was interviewed by the Putnam County Sheriff's detective 3 days later, she recalled Walter's exact last sentence before he walked to the vending bay. The detective wrote it down, verbatim. The sentence was, "My son is expecting me home well before lunch." The volunteer repeated it twice. She was certain of the wording. The detective later spoke with Walter's son by phone to confirm arrangements. The son said he had been on the phone with his father the previous evening. The son said his father had told him, clearly and repeatedly, that he expected to arrive in Knoxville mid-afternoon, not before lunch. The son said his father had specifically mentioned not wanting to rush. The volunteer was re-interviewed. She insisted on her recollection. She passed a subsequent memory assessment with no flags. The sentence she remembered had no match to anything Walter had said to anyone else in the preceding 24 hours. Observation 2 comes from Robert Callaway's case in Kentucky. A retired couple in a small motorhome was parked near Robert's tractor that morning. The husband had mounted a dash camera on the interior of the motorhome, pointing forward through the windshield to record highway drives for his own enjoyment. The camera was recording as they sat in the rest area eating breakfast. The camera captured the vending bay at the far edge of the frame, defocused and partly shaded. Investigators did not obtain the footage until 4 months later, when the retired couple returned home and reviewed their trip footage for another purpose, and noticed they had been at the same rest area where the disappearance had occurred. They turned the footage over voluntarily. The Rockcastle County Sheriff's Office reviewed it. The footage shows 43 minutes of ordinary rest area activity. At 6:51 and 12 seconds, for the duration of exactly 2 frames at 30 frames per second, a figure appears in the vending bay. The figure is wearing clothing that does not match any person documented at the rest area that morning. The frame before shows the vending bay empty. The frame after shows the vending bay empty. The figure is not motion blurred the way a person moving across the frame would be. The figure is static within the 2 frames. The forensic video specialist who reviewed the footage for the sheriff's office reported that he could not produce the 2-frame artifact through any camera error, compression glitch, or playback fault he was able to simulate. He reported it as a true exposure of something present in the field of view for approximately 66 milliseconds. Observation 3 comes from Dolores Finny's case in Oregon. Her 2018 Subaru Forester was equipped with OnStar, the telematics service that links the vehicle's electronics to a central monitoring center. After her disappearance, the Sherman County Sheriff's Office subpoenaed the OnStar record for the hours surrounding her arrival at the Biggs Junction rest area. The record showed routine data pings until 6:28 in the morning. At 6:28 and 47 seconds, the module transmitted a single, non-standard code. The code was 4 alphanumeric characters. An OnStar engineer reviewed the record when the sheriff's office requested clarification. He stated that the code did not appear in any version of the OnStar code manual he had access to. He stated that it was not an error code. He stated that it did not correspond to a crash signal, a theft alert, a maintenance notification, or any diagnostic feedback pattern. He suggested, without conviction, that it might have been a manufacturer test transmission from a pre-production diagnostic tool. The manufacturer denied ever using that code in any test routine. The code has never been satisfactorily explained. It was logged at the central server. It was time-stamped. It was received from Dolores's vehicle, and no one could say what it meant. Observation 4 comes from Gerald Pedigrew's case in Nebraska. The trucker parked near Gerald's motorhome had been wearing an Apple Watch to monitor his own cardiovascular health, at the recommendation of his physician after a minor cardiac event the previous year. The watch recorded his heart rate at 1-minute intervals. For the duration of the trucker's stay at the Kearney rest area, his heart rate ranged between 68 and 73 beats per minute, consistent with his baseline resting rate while sitting in a stationary vehicle. At 6:40 and 40 seconds, approximately 9 seconds after Gerald's product dropped from coil C4, the trucker's heart rate data log shows a sudden spike to 164 beats per minute, lasting approximately 4 seconds, and then a return to resting baseline within the next minute. The trucker, when asked about the spike by the Nebraska State Patrol 6 months later, had no recollection of any event that would have caused a momentary fear response. He did not remember feeling startled. He did not remember any sound, any sight, any physical sensation. He did remember, he said, tasting the burrito more intensely for a moment, which he had attributed to a particularly large piece of jalapeno. He said he had continued eating. His watch had recorded what his memory had not. A sentence no one else heard Walter say. A figure that appeared in 2 frames of one dash camera recording. A 4-character code from one vehicle telematics module. A heart rate spike a witness does not remember having. 4 instruments, 4 records, 4 pieces of evidence that exist in databases right now, and none of them leads anywhere a conventional investigation can follow. I will not speculate about what they indicate. Whatever they indicate has not been addressed by any official review of any of these cases. I mention them because the witnesses mentioned them, and because the families have read their mentions, and because those witnesses are, in every case, ordinary American travelers who were at a rest area on a Tuesday morning when something happened they could not explain. There is one final pattern I need to describe, which I have been saving. In the months Mr. Renwick and I spent assembling this investigation, we cross-referenced the 12 Tuesday mornings against records of solar activity, geomagnetic field fluctuations, astronomical events, and atmospheric conditions. The mornings in question were, by every public measure, ordinary. No spikes, no anomalies, nothing. We then cross-referenced them against the Federal Department of Transportation's interstate traffic density data. In every one of the 12 corridors on the 12 Tuesdays, a statistically significant drop in commercial vehicle traffic appeared during the 1-hour window surrounding the disappearance. The drop was modest in each case, 7 to 11% below expected traffic for that hour of that day of that corridor. 12 drops across 8 corridors across 11 years, all within the 1-hour window, all consistent in magnitude. A federal traffic analyst we sent the data to, without context, confirmed the pattern was real and outside routine variation. She asked what we were looking for. We told her the truth. She did not respond to our follow-up emails. The traffic drop is the final unexplained anchor. I do not know what it means. I have considered that it might be a reporting artifact, a common upstream cause, or a coincidence of the same statistical magnitude as the Tuesday clustering. I have not reached a conclusion. Mr. Renwick is 74 years old. He retired from the Federal Highway Administration in 2016. He lives in a small house outside of Chesapeake, Virginia. He will not meet me in person. He said the finding of this investigation has changed his relationship with highway travel, and he prefers not to discuss the work with anyone who knows him personally. We have communicated exclusively by phone and written correspondence. He told me, in our most recent conversation, that the 12 cases represented the most disturbing thing he had encountered in his career. Not the disappearances themselves, he said, but the silence that had followed each one. The way the cases had stayed isolated. The way no institution had connected them. The way a vending transaction log, routine in isolation, had become the single thread that had held the pattern together. He said, near the end of our call, that he no longer stopped at rest areas on Tuesday mornings. I have taken the same habit. I have driven to each of the 12 rest areas at least once over the last 2 years. I have walked the vending bays. I have stood in front of the coils where the untouched products dropped. I have watched other travelers come and go on days that were not Tuesdays. In June of 2024, I drove to the Buffalo County Sheriff's Office in Kearney, Nebraska. I asked to see the evidence from Gerald Pedigrew's case. The deputy on duty walked me back to a small climate-controlled room. Inside a cardboard box on a metal shelf, in a clear plastic evidence bag labeled with a case number in black marker, was the bottle of orange juice. It was sealed. The orange color was still visible through the plastic, slightly darker than fresh juice, which the deputy told me is normal for a bottle that has sat for 2.5 years. The label was clean. The cap was intact. I was allowed to stand in front of it for approximately 90 seconds. The deputy said the bottle would remain in that room until either the case was closed or the evidence retention policy was revised, whichever came first. He did not know when either of those events would occur. He said, in his personal opinion, that they would not occur in his lifetime. I asked him if the bottle was ever scheduled to be thrown out. He said no. He said it was the only physical evidence they had. He said throwing it away would mean accepting that the investigation had ended. He said the investigation had not ended. The investigation is ongoing. Mr. Renwick continues to monitor the vending log database. He has identified 2 more transactions with the same signature from 2024, though we have not yet been able to match a missing person report in either case. That work continues. If you work at a rest area and you have seen an untouched product in a delivery tray with a recent completed transaction log, contact your state missing persons unit. If someone in your family disappeared at a rest area on an interstate in the last decade, pull the vending machine transaction records for that morning through a FOIA request to your state's Department of Transportation. The records are retained for 7 years. They may tell you something you did not know. Share this with anyone who has driven across the country and wondered, for just a second, what it would be like to step into a rest area at dawn and not come back. I am Echo 7. I read the transaction logs that the Interstate keeps when the travelers do not come back. I will see you in the next one.